Hello, this week we're off to the River Otter in East Devon, where I'll be taking a closer look at one of the most exciting conservation projects in Britain today. "400 years ago, England's beavers were hunted to extinction, and the only surviving wild population now resides on the banks of the River Otter. I spent a rainy day on the banks of the River Otter joining in with the annual survey of the catchment with project lead Mark Elliott from Devon Wildlife Trust and Hugh Graham, a PhD student from the University of Exeter.
The tree species distance from the river is 9 metres. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7...
Beavers are important ecosystem engineers, stripping trees such as alder and willow. Although nocturnal, their presence was clearly visible in defined teeth marks along the tree bark and subsequent coppice regrowth, marking their industrious activity in the surrounding catchment. It was this sort of data the project needs to collect.
I just want to put some diameters, so the main probably about 20 centimetres, and that's stored that tree.
I spoke to Hugh and asked how his research is contributing to the trial.
So I'm a PhD student working on the Beaver trial project with the University of Exeter, focusing on what the impacts of the beavers are on the physical landscape and function of the River Otter catchment. So I'm interested in the hydrology of the river, geomorphology, the water quality, but also riparian vegetation and woodland, and trying to quantify to what extent these beavers are altering the landscape and whether or not indeed they have any potential benefits of the way we use the river system. For example, we're very interested in how beaver dams might alter the hydrology to improve our resilience to flooding by slowing the flow of water in the upper reaches where beavers build their dams. It's quite possible that we might actually see a reduction in peak flood flows, which in a very flashy catchment like the River Otter could significantly reduce the risk of flooding to people who live in large towns such as Otter St Mary.
Mark Elliott is leading the project and explained the stages of how the project gained momentum.
This is part of the River Otter Beaver trial. Devon Wildlife Trust was granted a 5-year licence in 2015 to re-release beavers back into the River Otter. They were beavers that had been living wild on the river since 2007. No one knows for sure where they came from, but we were given a licence to re-release them back into the river after they'd been screened for a parasite called Echinococcus. And we're now carrying out a really detailed survey to understand what the beavers are doing, how they're using the river, and as part of the trial we have to quantify what the impacts of the beavers are on the ecology, on the landowners, the farmers, the infrastructure within the valley, and so that at the end of the 5-year trial we can present the evidence to DEFRA and Natural England, and then they can make a decision about the future of the beavers here on the River Otter.
Despite their proficiency in transforming the area around them and encouraging other species, beavers have been known to cause quite significant damage to areas of farmland nearby. I asked Mark about the main challenges the trial faces as the project enters its second year.
It's a very time-consuming exercise. What we're doing today is mapping all of the field signs along this stretch. And it's taken us all morning really to work our way up the river, and we've probably gone half a mile in the morning. So it's a really time-consuming exercise. In the wider landscape, at the moment, really we're finding very little resistance to the beavers coming back into the river here. The impacts are quite subtle. The animals are still living at low density, so the impacts are still fairly subtle. And so we're not finding too many conflicts. We will get conflicts, there's no two ways about it. They're engineers, they really do manipulate their environment. They build dams if they don't have deep water, for example, and that can cause conflicts with land use. So we're really trying to understand what those conflicts are, but so far we're seeing very few of them.
Now, as Mark said, Devon Wildlife Trust has just 4 years to monitor this population and prove to the government that these charismatic and industrious mammals can have a transformative effect on the landscape and encourage biodiversity.